Sea Grant Bluff webinar series. As you could hear, probably this webinar is being recorded. I'm glad folks that were able to sign on today. I thought the weather events were unique to Erie, but apparently this is a statewide wind and rainstorm. So to those that could join us, I'm thankful and welcome. For those new to the Bluff webinar series, my name is Sean Rafferty. I'm the research director for the Pennsylvania Sea Grant College program. And so in the past webinars, I've served as the host facilitator, but I'll also be your featured presenter today as well. So the purpose of the past two webinars were really to highlight research efforts related to coastal erosion or bluff recession assessment. This webinar is a little different, and then we'll be discussing some of the tools available through the WALTeR website for stakeholders in the Pennsylvania Lake Erie watershed. Again, I'd like to thank the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection through their Growing Greener program for providing the funding for this webinar series. And just a couple housekeeping notes, this webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly after today's event. And also during the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A feature of Zoom to ask any questions. I will save the questions till the end and answer as many as I can get to in the time allotted. So without further ado, I will turn over the virtual floor to myself. Okay, so today's topic is the Pennsylvania Great Lakes Water and Land Technical Resource website. I wish I could take credit for this acronym, but my colleague and our program manager, Tim Bruno with Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, came up with this, and we went after the funding to make it happen. Again, my name is Sean Rafferty. I'm with the Pennsylvania Sea Grant program. And so my goals for today are to provide a little background on the project, looking at the genesis, so how this website came to be, the funding mechanisms, and then a brief background or introduction on the project development. And then what I would like to do is spend the bulk of the time on the actual structure, the functions of the WALTeR website. That includes topics, the geospatial functions, project toolkit and resources. And I'd like to focus some time on a specific geospatial tool we developed. It's a web mapping application. So I'll run through some of the functions in the data associated with that tool. So a little background, I'll try not to be long-winded on this slide here. I spent more than a decade of my early career working on AOC issues. So I tend to talk a lot about the AOC, but I'll keep it brief to this one slide. So in 1991, Presque Isle Bay was listed as a Great Lakes area concern. And this is a listing under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. Essentially, it identified degraded areas around the Great Lakes that were impaired. And so an area could have a host of impairments, one of 14, or it could have all 14 impairments. And so Presque Isle Bay was specifically listed because there was a fish tumor and other deformities issue. And then also there's restrictions on dredging within the bay because of contaminated sediment. And so at the same time, Presque Isle Bay was listed in a large part because it was petitioned by the citizens of the community to have that added to the list of AOCs. And those citizens eventually became part of the Presque Isle Bay Public Advisory Committee, forming in 1991. And their role really was to advise the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection on AOC related issues. And so through years of study and recovery of the bay, in 2013, Presque Isle Bay was officially delisted as an area concern within the Great Lakes. And so shortly thereafter, in 2014, the Presque Isle Bay Public Advisory Committee had dissolved as the AOC had been delisted. And so prior to their being dissolved, the Presque Isle Bay PAC, Sarah Stallman, your camera's on. If you could turn it off, please. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Sarah. So as prior to their dissolvement in 2014, there was a focus group session held at one of the PAC meetings, kind of garnering what they would like to see happening going forward. Really, what they identified the need for transparency and easy access to Great Lakes related information. So this included services, regulatory and management guidance, research studies and results, watershed plans, restoration and protection project data, and geospatial data. And so the members of the PAC at the time had suggested a one-stop web-based center to host all this type of information they were interested in seeing be preserved. And so in response to their request, my colleagues and I, around that time, 2004, 2015, applied for Growing Greener funds to create the Pennsylvania Great Lakes Water and Land Technical Resources website, or WALTeR for short. And so we applied for the funding for WALTeR through Growing Greener as part of a larger Pennsylvania Great Lakes integration project. And there was several components to that project. One component was acquiring high resolution LiDAR and orthoimagery data. And those were the data that we discussed in the Bluff Recession webinar in February. So we needed those data to be able to conduct the Bluff Recession analysis. The second part was to conduct the Bluff Recession analysis. Also, as part of that grant was conducting a literature review on bluff management issues. And that report is available on the WALTeR website. And that was the first webinar in January presented by Tony Foyle, where he covered a lot of the bluff management issues. Also, as part of that was to develop a bluff erosion potential index. And so myself, along with Mike Neighbor and Tony Foyle at Penn State Barron, are in the process of completing that bluff erosion potential index as we speak. And the last component of the Great Lakes Service integration was the creation of this WALTeR website. So if you're on here wondering what WALTeR has to do with Bluff Recession is, so WALTeR was created in part to address the needs of the Presque Isle Bay PAC, but also it's to serve as a location for all these bluff analysis studies and tools and et cetera that we are developing. So the website is pawwalter.psu.edu. If you have it up now, you can go ahead and follow along. So specifically looking at the Water and Land Technical Resources, or WALTeR, some of the components that we include in the grant that we wanted to see as part of this website was a Lake Erie mapping application portal. And so this was to provide access to relevant geospatial data in the Pennsylvania Lake Erie watershed. Also a data clearinghouse and repository. So this was to provide access to documents, whether it be fact sheets or research reports, other studies. So that was that component. Also, there was to be a Bluff Recession portal, and this is where all the latest Bluff Recession tools would be housed. And the last component was a project portal. And so a disclaimer here, I am not a web developer. My background is in biology, environmental engineering, and fisheries biologist. So I consider myself a fisheries biologist, not a web developer. Knowing that we wanted a website and I'm not a web developer, the first thing I did was reach out to a team at Penn State Barron, so their IT. And the first person I contacted was Jim Seraphin. He's in charge of IT at Barron. He had recommended Kathy Nose, who's a professor in the Management Information Systems Department at Barron. So I contacted Kathy, and she happened to run a nonprofit that specifically focused on developing websites. So I connected with her, and she had hired a couple students, Brian Roel and Cody Hogan. So Brian provided a lot of the support for the geospatial development aspect of the WALTeR. And then Cody Hogan did a lot of the structure development in partnership with RJ Toney, who was in the IT department at Penn State Barron. When RJ left Barron, Andrew Roseman jumped in. So that's Andrew, pictured your lower right on the top is Kathy Nose. And so Andrew has been my go-to for any IT issues. And then also Fred Fenstemaker has done a lot with the GIS background and the ArcGIS enterprise software we use. And so I have 4 bullets here on what Drupal is. Anything beyond that, I probably wouldn't be able to answer questions on Drupal, but the actual functions of the website, I can certainly answer questions. So why Drupal? There's a lot of web platforms available. Drupal's free. It's open source web development platform. And you don't need a technical background to maintain maintain a Drupal website. I would say you need a technical background to create a Drupal website, but I am pretty easily able to go onto the WALTeR website at any time and update information. If there's a big structural change I need, obviously I'll have to go to Andrew and others in the IT department. Drupal is great for functionality and scalability. You can keep adding to it. And it has one of the largest community developers in the world. So there's a large user group. So if you run into roadblocks, there's people to reach out to. And so the WALTeR website went live in March 2018. And what I'd like to do is spend the rest of the presentation time on walking you through some of the functions of the website. Okay, so if you go to pawalter.psu.edu, hopefully this is what you see. This is the homepage for WALTeR, and there's a couple functions you'll see on the homepage that I'll walk through. And the whole goal of this website was to be neat and clean and simple. So there's not a lot to it. So that was the whole goal of the project, to make it easy to navigate so people can get right to the information they're looking for. So as you're navigating the WALTeR website, a couple features. So on the top left corner of the website is the WALTeR logo. You can click on that on any page and it'll get you back to the home screen. We also have a carousel on the home page, and that announces any events that are relevant to the Pennsylvania Lake Erie watershed. And also we'll use that to announce any new initiatives or any new resources on the website. So currently you'll see there's an advertisement for the Bluff webinar series, and then there's another announcement on the State of Knowledge report for Bluff Recession that Tony Foyle put together. There's a top menu bar where you can access the topics, geospatial information, resources, project toolkit, and about WALTeR. You'll also notice on the bottom are these access buttons. And so these take you to the same places as the top menu bar. So you have the topics, project toolkit, geospatial, and resources. So the first function of the WALTeR site I want to walk through is the topics. And so if you click the topics button, it'll take you to this landing page where you'll see 9 topics identified. And I want to take a step back too. So we had the web development team. Then we also had the content team on the back end, providing the web development team with information. So a lot of information you see on this website was pulled together by not only myself, but Tim Bruno with Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection helped design as well. So you'll see these are topics that we felt were priorities to the Pennsylvania Lake Erie region. So you can click on any of these 9 topics. It'll take you to an additional landing page where there's an overview, which provides a little background on the topic and why it's relevant to our area or to the Great Lakes. There's also news and initiatives, so any projects happening that are relevant to our area and any news. And then also what we did was link the resources from the resource sections to the actual topic pages. So given this is a Bluff webinar series, I figured I would just run through the Bluff management topic page real quick. And so when you go to the Bluff landing page, you'll get an overview of Bluff Recession and how it relates to the Pennsylvania Lake Erie shoreline, any news and initiatives. So this is where you would go to find the Bluff Erosion Potential Index once it's finalized, as well as the Pennsylvania Lake Erie Bluff Recession analysis that Mike Neighbor presented on last month. We're just going through the final data set now, taking one more look at it, reviewing it, and hoping the next month to be able to have those data available on the WALTeR website. And further, if you scroll further down the page, you'll see resources at the bottom. So any resources we add to the website and tag with Bluff management will appear here. So you can see there's a number of Bluff management related resources available on the website now. Okay, the next function I want to provide an overview on is the project toolkit. So if we go back to one of the opening slides, one of the goals of the WALTeR website was to provide a project portal. So access to project information or permitting information. And this tool wasn't on our radar when we started the project. And this is something Tim Bruno had come across maybe a year or so into the project and thought it would be really cool to adapt this project flowchart tool to Erie County. So the Pennsylvania Integrated Water Resources Planning flowchart tool was originally developed for York County, and we are currently finalizing it and adapting it for Erie County. So the flowchart itself is an instrument by which users will be led through a logical process of questions and suggestions to ensure the user considers what is related to water when implementing a project. And so to be user-friendly, the flowchart is divided into 5 categories. So if you can fit a project to any of these 5 categories, you can go through the project flowchart. So conservation, preservation projects, infrastructure projects, agriculture projects, land improvement projects, as well as planning projects. So this can be comprehensive planning or environmental planning. And so based on the type of proposed project, users will choose the appropriate leg and subleg, if applicable, to guide them through the flow chart. And so basically you get a printout of 11 by 17 sheets with all the results. And so really the goal of the flow chart is to pull together what already exists, make stakeholders aware of what exists, explain enough about what exists to allow the user to determine if it's pertinent to a particular project, and provide contact information should more detailed information be desired. And so like Mr. Bruno likes to call it, it's the TurboTax for water planning, essentially. So this is something we should be finishing up over the next month or two. And I think the best route would be, for those interested, holding a special webinar or planning session to walk through the tool, because it can be kind of complicated. And so once you get to the flowchart tool website, there's a couple options. You can learn more. So this tells you more about what the tool is capable of producing and doing for the user. And also the nice thing is it provides detailed instructions on how to use the tool, and also being able to understand some of the symbols that are associated with the tool. And so once you're ready to start a new project, you start new project. Above that is the drop-down arrow. It's currently available for York County and Westmoreland County, and soon to be Erie County. The other nice thing you can do is you can create a login. So if you want to start a project and not able to finish it, you're able to save it and get back to it. So that's the project toolkit section. The next function I'd like to walk through is the Geospatial. And this provides access to web mapping applications and data tools relevant to the Pennsylvania Lake Erie watershed. So once you click on the Geospatial landing page, you have an option of choosing maps or data. So maps are more web mapping application, whereas data are more tools that provide data and aren't necessarily a web mapping application. So the first thing I'll walk through is the maps function. So you click that, you hit the landing page with 12 different maps. So you can see MS4 requirements. This identifies MS4 communities in Pennsylvania and any impaired streams. And this was developed by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. We also have a link to the invasive mussel monitoring map. So this identifies locations where there's reports for zebra and quagga mussels throughout Pennsylvania. And this is maintained by Pennsylvania Sea Grant. The PA Conserves Land Map identifies conserved lands in Pennsylvania. This was developed by the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. The next one you'll see is the PFBC Map Gallery. So this is the map gallery maintained by the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. It houses maps such as trout fishing locations in Pennsylvania. You have a water restoration map available on the website as well. And so this provides the data produced as a result of the Presque Isle Bay Watershed Restoration and Protection Plan. This was developed by Sea Grant as well. You also have a link to algal bloom advisories. This is a tool that was created by the Erie County Health Department and is housed on the Regional Science Consortium website. This provides users access to beach advisory information for Presque Isle Bay related to, or I should say Presque Isle State Park, related to E. coli, and harmful algal blooms. The Erie County Data Center. So this provides economic and community data for the city of Erie, and this is maintained by Choose Erie. You also have another map here, Resilient Erie Story. So this story map provides a snapshot of all the projects in Erie County that help to build sustainability and resilience to coastal hazards in our area. This was a tool, a mapping tool developed by Crane, a local climate resilience group. Also, the lake level viewer, this is developed and maintained by NOAA, and this illustrates the scale of potential flooding or land exposure at a given water level. So you can log into this tool and adjust water levels to see how that'll affect coastal flooding. It's a really neat tool. The conservation area tool provides conservation planning information for species of concern identified in the Wildlife Action Plan. And then the last one here is a My Neighborhood tool. So this allows residents to explore various aspects of their neighborhoods. So information from trash collection night to where public art is located. So this is maintained by the city of Erie for residents of the city of Erie. So I wanted to focus on one tool we developed specifically for the WALTeR website. That's the Pawwalter web mapping application. And so until I jump into the actual tool and walk you through the tool, I wanted to provide a little background on the how and why we developed this. And so really the overarching reason was to provide access to data available in the Presque Isle Pennsylvania Lake Erie Integrated Water Resources Management Plan. There's too many acronyms floating around. So the goal of that plan was to summarize existing regulatory management and monitoring programs, summarize existing watershed plans, inventories, available data related to natural resources, coastal development, permitted facilities and discharges, ecological systems, recreation and public access opportunities, water use, and real-time data, and also prioritize restoration and conservation locations, and provided a series of maps and tables that highlight data that was collected. That plan was completed by my colleagues and myself in 2015. And so the idea was to take the data, those data sets that were available as part of that plan, and provide them in an easy to access format. And so what we did was we created a map in ArcGIS desktop, so ArcMap, if anybody's familiar. We built the map, created the way we wanted it to look, and then we uploaded it to the Penn State Barron web service. So you publish these maps with what we call a map service. Once you have the map service available, you can use the ArcGIS Enterprise software to create a web mapping application. And so originally this was something Brian Roel, the student I had mentioned in a previous slide, took ownership and ran with, and was able to create this web application. Unfortunately or fortunately, a couple months ago, as we moved the website and the WALTeR map to an updated server, we lost that web mapping application. So I quickly learned how to build web maps. So now I have that skill set in my toolbox. Just don't tell anybody. So you use this web app building function within ArcGIS Enterprise. And so you can pick the theme. So what do you want the map to look like? Choose which map you want to use based on a number of maps you upload. And then also one of the things I'll discuss are these widgets. So these are basically tools on the map that are available to include with your map. And so that's an overly simplified version of how the process works, but essentially you build the map on your desktop, load it to the cloud, and then use this other set of software to actually build your web mapping application. So that way the server or the web mapping application is communicating with the server, not your desktop. So if you click on the Pawwalter map, this is what you'll see. So this is the Lake Erie watershed with the streams identified. You'll see a number of widgets or tools available. The first one you can see highlighted, it looks like a target, that's my location. So if you hit that button, it will take you, it'll zoom into the map to your current location, wherever that may be, as long as that you have that enabled. And this is smartphone friendly, so you can access it on a phone or tablet. The next widget available is the house looking button. So this will take you back to the home screen. So if you zoom too far in or too far out and you just want to get back to the original or default extent, you can just click that button and it'll take you back. So on the upper left here is your zoom out button. So the minus sign will zoom you out. The plus button will zoom in. And then in the upper right, a couple tools. The first one is a measurement. So if you wanted to measure distance between point A and B, you can do that. It also allows you to measure area. So if you wanted to measure the area, you can do that as well. And the last widget we have available is a draw tool. So if you wanted to draw anything on the web map, you're able to do that. Another nice function is this search toolbar on the upper left. You can see I typed in 301 Peninsula Drive, Erie, PA. So that's the location of the Tom Ridge Environmental Center. You could type your home address in, hit enter, and it zooms you right to that location. So if you're interested in accessing all the data available for your property, you could simply type in your address and go right to that point. So back to the default screen. The other thing we have is the legend pop out. So if you click on those arrows on the lower left, it pops out the legend default. And so you can see currently we have the streams and the watershed boundary file layers activated. Another feature is you can access the layers list with that. It looks like a stack of papers. Click that and that brings up all the layers that are available through the Pawwalter web mapping application. So if you're interested in looking at ecological data, you would just click the drop down arrow. It pops up all the different ecological data layers that are available. Seeing that I'm a fisheries biologist, we'll activate the fish layer. So this was a study from 2012 where we looked at fish communities at a number of stream sites across the county. And so you can activate that layer, and that basically gives you all the points where fish communities were assessed and what condition they were in. You can also click on an individual point if you want the site location specific data. So I just picked a site on Walnut Creek. You can see that pops up. It provides some stream water quality data as well as fish community data as well. You can see the name black nose there. So that's black nose dace. We collected 120 black nose dace at that site at that day. So you can click on any of these points and it'll give you all the fisheries related information for that site. Another nice feature is on the top, you can choose your base map. Currently, I have the top topographic map selected, but if you would like, there's these 13 or so options. You can have imagery, streets maps, any one of these 13 base maps you can change out. And the last function is a print function. So say you wanted to print a map for a presentation or save a map for any other reason, you can use this print function. And so what you would do is give it a name, hit print, and what it does is create an image file. You click on the image file and you can right click on that so you can save the image, you can copy it, import it into a presentation. You can copy the address and send it to yourself or whoever you need to send it to. And also you can just use your web browser function print if you wanted to print out a paper copy as well. And so that was a brief overview of the maps function in the Pawwalter map. The next thing I want to focus on are the data tools available on WALTeR. So you simply click on the data function and you'll see there's 7 data tools available currently. The Pawwalter one will give you access to data available on the WALTeR website. Erie climate data. So this is projected climate data, temperature, precipitation, hot, cool days, water levels available for Erie County. And this is maintained by Crane. The eNow Explorer provides ocean and Great Lakes related economic data for coastal counties. The cyanobacteria algal bloom link provides access to bloom data for Western Lake Erie, and this is maintained by NOAA. The Great Lakes Water Level tool will provide current and historical water level data for the Great Lakes, and this is maintained by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Neighborhoods at risk identifies where flooding, urban heat, and hurricanes impact the most vulnerable people and communities. And the last tool currently available is the Coastal Restoration Toolkit. Excuse me, provides high-level introductory educational information for community members on how to develop a coastal restoration project from concept to proposal. And so the last function of the WALTeR website I wanted to overview for today was the resources function. And so when you choose resources, it'll take you to this landing page where all the resources available for the WALTeR website are listed. The nice thing we did with this as well is provide a search function, so you can search by topic or resource type. So for instance, if you were specifically looking for research reports, click the drop-down menu, hit apply, and it'll return all the research reports available on WALTeR. The other nice function is you can go by topic. So for instance, if you were interested in bluff management resources, you could choose that topic and it lists all the resources associated with bluff management. And if you wanted just bluff management research reports, you could do that as well if you wanted to narrow it down further. So those are the resources available in the function of the resource landing page. And again, the goal of this webinar was to provide a brief overview and run through of the WALTeR website and some of the functions. And with that, I will answer any questions you might have. Let me open the Q&A. So I'm currently not seeing any questions. I'll keep it open for another minute or so in case any pop up. Again, you can always reach out to me if you have any questions that you think of after the webinar. The other thing I'd like to point out too is if as you're navigating through the WALTeR website and you have some tools in mind or resources you think should be part of the WALTeR website, please do send them my way, and we'll review them and post them if appropriate. So we do have a couple questions. So one, Scott asked, will you be presenting WALTeR to the Master Watershed Group when they make it to Erie? Scott, I would be happy to do that. If you want to connect me to them, that would be great. I'd be happy to present this webinar or the website to any groups that are interested. So we had somebody interested in how we collected the fish from 2012. Happy to answer fisheries related questions. So we used a backpack electrofisher. For those of you not familiar with electrofishing, you essentially put electricity into the water. The fish are attracted to that electrical charge and swim towards it, and we're able to net the fish, identify them, count them, and release them. Great. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. Again, I'm happy to answer questions or present to any group that you might be interested in. So I guess we can end now, and I'll give you 20 minutes or so of your life back. I thank everybody for attending. I appreciate it. I hope you log on to the WALTeR website, navigate through it, and I hope you find it useful. And the next webinar will be in April, so April 30th. Tony Foyle will be talking about a recent project he completed, looking at sediment loss from Western Erie County into Lake Erie, and also looking at bluff recession. Thank you, everyone.